Welcome to LinkedIn News Live, a show about the world of work and our place in it. I'm Nina Melendez. Today we're talking about our top companies list. You might have seen something about it on your feed already. LinkedIn Editorial compiles the top 50 companies in countries all over the world that are the best to grow your career in. And in this very confusing labor market, this list can be a huge resource for new opportunity seekers. To begin with, let's take a look at the list with some context. For that, I want to bring in my lovely colleague, Juliette Farreau, news editor at LinkedIn News. Hi, Juliette.
Hi, Nina. Thanks so much for having me.
Always so nice to see you here at the LinkedIn News Live table. So let's start with how these companies are measured. What are the parameters this list is measured against?
Yes, so all of these lists are measured based off of exclusive LinkedIn data. We look at 8 pillars that are all based off of a certain element of career progression. So we're looking at pillars like skills growth, how often employees are gaining skills while they're working at the companies. We're also looking at things like promotion. So how often are employees getting ahead both while they work at the company and when they leave to go on to their next opportunity.
So let's look at this list. Let's just pull up the first 5 that made the list. What's unique about some of these companies in the top 5?
Yes, so in the top 5, we have Amazon, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Google's parent company, Alphabet. All of these 5 have been on our list in previous years, but we are seeing a lot of turnover this year. Almost half of the companies on this year's list, 42%, are completely new. So there is a good mix. And a number of companies, as we know, have faced layoffs over the past year. Some of those are in the top 5 and on the rest of the list, but all of these companies are hiring. There are over 100,000 open jobs on the list.
That's great to hear. Over 100,000 jobs on the list. This is great for people who are looking to make their next move. What about some trends that are notable in this year's list?
Yes. So the first one is banks. Banks are really elbowing their way in. There are 10 banks on our list and 3 are in the top 5. And this is really a result of banks kind of fighting to recruit top talent, especially against kind of big tech companies. These banks have really invested in the employee experience. So things like they have kind of a more diverse talent pool, kind of wider recruitment opportunities, and have really formalized kind of learning and development initiatives and programs. Another trend we're seeing is kind of a new focus on values. And this is something that was predominantly kind of more catered towards Gen Z previously, but now all professionals are really looking to work for companies whose values match their own. And companies are both kind of reacting to this by adding values-based questions to hiring practices and interviews, and also kind of instituting programs across the company from things like D&I kind of initiatives or social impact.
And what about skills? So I know last year skills was a huge thing. What about this year? Top skills that people need to have for these companies?
Yes, so there's really a mix of both hard and soft skills, kind of a number of hard tech skills that we're seeing, like software development or mobile app development. And with this, really, we're seeing the rise of AI-focused skills. So as we know, artificial intelligence continues to rise in importance, and most of the companies on this year's list have reported that it has either already impacted their workflows or plans to this year. And companies, as they kind of double down on instituting AI initiatives within their company, are really looking to hire workers who excel in these areas. And kind of across all of these skills, companies are really focused on skills-based hiring practices, and regardless of what kind of industry or function you're in, are focusing on doubling down hiring kind of initiatives and skills, like internal skills platforms from things like Amazon, that is focused on kind of making skills-based hiring integral part of their hiring practices, among with plenty other kind of companies as well.
Julia, we have to leave it there. Thanks for all of that context, and congratulations on the list.
Thank you so much,
all
Nina.
The hard work that goes into it. I'm going to be speaking with the VP of Talent Acquisition at Verizon, Steve Watts, in just a moment. But first, there are a few companies on our list that started in similar economic conditions, and they thrived. Let's take a quick jaunt look at history and take a watch.
Keeping a company afloat during economic uncertainty is a challenge. But imagine starting a business in the middle of a recession and growing it to be part of the most successful companies in the world. Well, some of the top companies on our list did exactly that. Thomas Edison started General Electric back in 1892 during one of the country's earliest recessions, when business activity fell by nearly 40% countrywide. Charles Flint launched IBM in 1911 during a 2-year economic panic that caused a major drop in stocks. Brothers Walt and Roy started Disney in 1929, right at the beginning of the Great Depression. And Fred Smith launched FedEx in 1971 as the U.S. recovered from an inflation crisis. All 4 companies have grown to become household names, generating billions of dollars in revenue per year, and now employ a combined hundreds of thousands of people all over the globe.
When the job market is wonky the way it is these days, how can this list be a resource for opportunity seekers? Well, joining me now is also lovely Senior Managing Editor Andrew Seaman and host of the podcast and live show Get Hired. Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So look, there's so much talk about layoffs and job losses. How can job seekers really use this list to their advantage?
It's a great question. So one of the most important steps job seekers can take in their search for work is to come up with a list of companies where they'd actually see themselves. We've done some of that legwork, and we've shown obviously the top 50 countries and companies in countries around the world. But you could also go to the bottom of the list and find our methodology, and that will really serve as a map to figure out, what are the important parts of a company where they can grow their career. So when you sit down with an employer, you could say, what is retention like? What opportunities do you give people to grow their careers? So you could take that methodology and apply it to your own job search.
Speaking of methodology and all of the data you guys have compiled, what is the set of data that job seekers should really be looking at when looking at which companies to apply to?
It's a really great question. So basically, no list is going to tell you where you need to work, but the most important thing is to figure out what your needs and wants are. So sit down with a sheet of paper or at your computer and say, okay, I need this salary or I need this work arrangement. Some people want flexible work. So if you need that in your life because maybe you have children, maybe you're a caregiver to your parents or something like that, make sure you get that on a sheet of paper. But also say you want to be a manager within 2 years, or you need something else. Maybe you need tuition reimbursement, something like that. Get those on a sheet of paper and really look at our list and also whatever companies you're looking for and see whether or not those align with your needs and wants. And really, that's the data that you should be paying attention to.
And how important is a company's average length of employment when people are thinking of just the layoffs that are happening and also where they want to go next?
So average length of employment is always a good signal of people who actually like where they work. So they are probably sticking around. Usually people don't want to stick around someplace where they're not welcome or where they feel like they're really struggling. So it's important to take a look because it could really signal a place where people actually feel like they can grow and where they're having a good time. However, a lot of people want different things out of work. So there are some people who don't want to stay at employers very long. Maybe they want to switch after 3-5 years. Other people, like myself, I like to sit around. So I'm not going anywhere unless LinkedIn kicks me out. So, I like to be at a place where I'm going to have longevity. So really it's your personal preference, but usually if there is good retention, it means that the employees are sticking around, and there's probably a good reason for that.
And it's it signifies a healthy job, healthy company, right? If they can keep their employees that long as well.
Typically. And there are companies that do admit where they like to see their employees move on because it means that they've developed them and that other companies are seeing them as attractive pieces of talent.
Last question for you, Andrew. If an employee or if a candidate is lucky enough to get several job offers, what is the best way that they should pick?
Really, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it comes down to your needs and wants. But I will add a little bit of nuance to this. So one of the big things is really figuring out what your values are and also what you feel like your purpose should be in your work. And when those align with your employer, usually you feel like your work has purpose, that you're fulfilling a mission, or that you're leaving a good legacy. It could be environmental, it could be educational, it could be something like that. So those are all really great places where your values, your mission can intersect with your work. And no one's going to really complain if those things intersect. So I would say align with your needs and wants, but then also make sure that your values and your mission align with your employer as well.
I feel like the main takeaway from this is really to personalize it, to really look for what you want in a company and use that list that way. Because there's so much data that you can look at in order to make that decision.
Totally. Yeah. No one's going to be able to tell you where you should work.
Right.
It's going to come down to your personal choice.
Right.
However, we could give you as much information so you can make that information, you can make an informed decision.
Yeah.
So, it's going to come down to you and what you think is best for you.
Andrew, we have to leave it there. Thank you for being with us here on LinkedIn News Live.
Thank you, Nina.
And let's move on to our next featured guest. We're talking about Verizon now. Telecoms giant Verizon is one of the few companies in the industry to make our list this year. They have over 100,000 employees worldwide. And part of why we have them on the show today is because they have a robust career growth program. Verizon ranked number 12 on our list this year. And to talk about that, we are going to be joined by Steve West. He is the head of global talent acquisition at Verizon, and Steve has been at the company for almost a full decade. He started as a lead recruiter, then worked his way up to director, and now serves as the VP of global talent acquisition. Before Verizon, he was a corporate legal recruiter and an IT recruiter. Steve has a bachelor's degree of psychology from Columbia University, and here he is at the table with me.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
So, Steve, I said earlier that the company has invested so much in talent growth. Can you tell me why that's important for Verizon?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in Verizon's DNA, to be honest. We have 4 key stakeholders. One of our key stakeholders is society, and it starts there. We launched Citizen Verizon a couple of years ago, and one of the initiatives out of that was to really prepare 500,000 individuals for jobs of the future economy by 2030. And we're well on our way to do that. That's what we do externally in society, but then we also take that in-house and do it for our own employees as well. So we have programs from early in career emerging talent. We have fellowships for our military. We have programs such as NAF internships for our high school students. We go all the way from early in career through leadership development as well. And it's really in the core of everything that we do to develop our talent.
Let's talk about your Talent GPS program. It's about attracting the right talent and providing them with the right opportunities within Verizon. How did this program come about? And when you talk about, quote unquote, the right talent, what does that mean?
Yeah, and it's tough, right? So Verizon is a huge company, over 100,000 employees, as you said. When you start to look at all the different roles and all the different skills and all the different capabilities that exist within that ecosystem, you got to find a way to bring it all together. And so that's when we launched Talent GPS. And so really what Talent GPS did initially was just outline what roles we have, what are the critical skills and capabilities that come with each of those, and then be able to tell the employees what that means. And so what that's produced is a capability for employees to say, hey, these are the skills that I have today. This is what a role that seems interesting to me that has skills that are similar. I can now see my path to that career. It also gives managers a lot of tools to be able to coach and develop their talent as well.
Steve, I want to pause the conversation very quickly and say hi to some members who are joining us live. We've got Shelby from Texas, Nick from South Africa, Jose from California, Sharif from France, Martha from Tennessee. If you have any questions for Steve West, put them in the comments. We'd love to get those answered for you. He is the VP of Head of Talent Acquisition at Verizon. It's a mouthful. Steve, are there any principles that guides you or guides the company when you are hiring?
Yeah, absolutely. We are really striving to be a skills-based hiring practice company. And that starts with really things like taking degrees out of your job postings. We don't require degrees for the majority of our jobs. And we really try to focus on what are the core capabilities and competencies that come with that role. That's the first thing. The second thing is really using data to help tell the story, taking some of the bias out of it and really letting the numbers speak for themselves a little bit. But really at the end of the day, the number one guiding principle that we use across the company and really across talent acquisition at Verizon is providing great experiences, candidate experiences, employee experiences. If we can do that and we have a great communication with our candidates throughout the process, then we know we're going to make the right hire.
And when you are looking at candidates, is there something that you look for in particular? Do they, you mentioned skills for sure. What about personality-wise? What about how they present themselves? What about that diversity, anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are totally focused on building our diverse talent pipelines. And so anything that we can do to continue to make sure that we have the most inclusive hiring practice, to make sure that we bring everybody's authentic selves to that interview so they can talk about what they bring to the table. How can they apply what they bring to the table to what we're trying to accomplish as a company? It really gets away from what are the basic qualifications for the job, what are the preferred qualifications, and really gets to what value do I have and how does it fit into Verizon's overall goals.
And you had mentioned veterans earlier. So when I talk about diversity, I want to emphasize we're talking about disabilities, veteran status, all of that.
That's
stuff.
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, we have our employee resource groups. I'm wearing the t-shirt today, 10 employee resource groups that we represent our employees across the globe and really across so many different avenues and lifestyles and backgrounds. And it's really great when you start to attend these employee resource group events and learn about what their cultures they're bringing to the table, what they've gone through, and how you can apply that to how we're moving forward.
So, Steve, you've been at the company for about 9 years, right? As I mentioned earlier, what do you think has been pivotal to your success at Verizon?
It's flown by, that's for sure. But I would say the number one thing is building strong relationships. We have an awesome network of people. I said over 100,000 people again at Verizon. You build a network with 100,000 people, and you have people that you can lean on, people that can lean on you, people that you trust that can trust you, and you really just start to grow your opportunities just by connecting with people.
I actually have a question here from one of our members, Renita. She's asking for you, Steve, how has AI impacted hiring? Are you integrating AI and building a diverse employee base? With AI. That's a great question.
Very good question. And we could talk about AI for a really long time. We're exploring it. I think we want to be cautious. We want to make sure that we're not adding any bias to the process. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're being inclusive. So we're being careful, but we do think that there is a future in AI, and there is some opportunity for us, especially when we think about our overall talent practices. How do you connect hiring to training to long-term career growth and development and succession planning? It all connects through data, and AI really helps with that piece.
Do you think AI is going to completely upend the hiring process and even your talent?
I hope not.
Okay.
I think it will have a major impact, but there is a human component to it.
Yeah.
You have to keep a human component to recruiting and to talent practices. Employees want that. We've seen that through the pandemic. Employees want to have some human interaction, so you can't lose all of that touch.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I call for help, I always prefer to hear a person on the other end instead of that robot.
Absolutely.
She's very nice, but I have to say I prefer a person. When you're talking about skills-based and talent growth, are you incorporating any AI, courses on understanding AI or how to use AI in those courses or any of that growth?
Yeah, there is some development programs that are built around that. And really what it's about is just understanding how you can connect skills between different things. Skills seems to be that common language that connects jobs to individuals, to career paths, and technology is the piece that pulls it all together. So I think that the biggest piece is making sure that you understand the inputs you're putting into the system are going to spit out the right outcomes.
That was a great question, Renita. You prompted all these other things off the top of my head. We've got a question from Shelby, who is asking, how does Verizon empower women in the workplace?
Oh, it's amazing. We have our Wave ERG, which is representative of thousands of members across the company, and I love to be a ally of the Wave ERG as well. We do so much work around raising up our women and making sure that we have equal opportunity in our workforce. It starts from having those inclusive hiring processes that I mentioned, but then it continues on throughout the entire employee life cycle, making sure that there's opportunities to be heard, to stand up, be able to voice your opinions. We have a culture now that really rings that true, and it's come through in our employer brand where we're able to really allow our employees to tell the story about what it's like to work for Verizon versus Verizon telling people what it's like to work for us.
Let's talk about growth within a company, because that can be really tough. Getting in the door is one hurdle, and then once you're in, being able to move up the ranks the way you've been able to. What would you say is the number one thing that people do wrong that has been a barrier to their internal success at Verizon?
Yeah, I think when we think growth, we think up. And I think that's the biggest first problem is stop looking up first. Look laterally, look across. You need to garner several different experiences to build that profile, to build your resume, to build your knowledge and comfort as you enter into that next opportunity. So it's one thing to move up, but you need to be prepared to move up. And in order to do that, you need to look horizontally first.
And how do people look horizontally? Any advice?
I would say at Verizon, tools like Talent GPS, you start to connect those jobs based on the skills that I have and the skills that I'm working towards, and you start to see what opportunities open up when I get those skills. That's that common language that helps to create that pathway and then really sets you up for success.
So you've been in talent acquisition for several years, not just at Verizon, but elsewhere. And with the economy and the job market being the way that it is now, what is your advice or your experience to job seekers on how they can best get their foot in the door at any company?
Yeah, and I don't know that this is 100% new, but the biggest thing to me is continue to network. You have to build your network, whether that's within your company you're at or externally as well. And I think LinkedIn's been a great source to help to provide those connections, but continuing to build that network, build your brand. What do you want to be known for? And then at the same time, don't stop learning. You have to learn the business. You have to learn what's going on in the economy. You have to understand how what we're doing at the company you work at for Verizon, what we're doing at Verizon that impacts the world as a whole, and then start to connect the dots between what are the skills that I have and how can I bring that to drive Verizon forward.
So you heard Andrew join us earlier, and he was talking about really personalizing your job search, making sure that what the company has to offer matches the things that you need.
That's right.
Is there anything you want to add to that, or particular maybe to Verizon? Is Verizon a great place, say, for people who have children or maybe people who have disabilities? Like what would you say Verizon really offers?
Absolutely. It's the best company to work for. And obviously I'm partial, but I've been there for most of my
LinkedIn's
career.
not too bad, I have to say. I'm enjoying LinkedIn so far.
I'm a father of 4, recently had twins about 3 months ago. So as a parent, Verizon's the place to be. But across the board, regardless of which benefits, perks, culture you're looking for, Verizon's got it. I really think that the key is yes, what is the company going to be providing you? But then what is it going to be when I'm there? Am I going to really add value, or am I going to sit there in that role that I don't really want to be a part of this thing long term? And Verizon really gives you that opportunity to come in, be your authentic self, bring all of you with you, and then help to drive the world forward.
Do you think that it is best to get fresh talent to a company for it to grow, or do you think that it's growing within, or is it a healthy mixture of both?
I think it's got to be a healthy mixture of both. We love our emerging talent programs. We love bringing talent in, especially as we think about those from different backgrounds, but making sure that you also are really cultivating all of the knowledge and experience that you have within the employees that work for your company already. There's so much talent there. We can't look past that. So we need to make sure that we really just unlock internal mobility, and open the doors to bring in new perspectives at the same time.
I want to say hi to a couple other folks who are joining us from all over the world. We've got Stu from New Zealand, Stacy from Rhode Island, Carlos from Brazil, Asil from Yemen, Ekron from Turkey. So this actually
all over the place.
All over the place.
This
is great. Actually, let's talk about that. How does Verizon hire international very much? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our team hires internationally. We hire across EMEA, APAC, LATAM, Canada, US. We hire everywhere. And it really is based off of where we're going as a company and looking at the most strategic hubs for our talent. And there is talent everywhere. So we need to make sure that we're not closed door looking at ourselves within a vacuum, and really opening up the aperture to be able to get all of the available talent that's going to bring us forward and help to move the world forward, honestly.
Before I let you go, any last thoughts about what job seekers should be thinking about, specifically as they look to Verizon as potentially their new employee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you can't go wrong with Verizon. It is the company that's there for everyone, but at the same time, there's a lot of companies that are doing great things. And so the cool thing is when you start to look at how these companies are working together, having these partnerships, you've got these different coalitions, everybody's out to set the same mission forward. And so I think it's really important that when our talent comes in, they see our brand, they see Verizon, they see a home for themselves, and they see how they can come in and they can help shape the culture themselves as well. So it's not just what Verizon's going to be offering you, but what you're bringing to Verizon.
And you say you can't go wrong with Verizon, but I mean, there's so many other telecom giants out there.
Yes.
Really, what differentiates you guys? Is it your culture? Is it, tell me.
The biggest thing is our people. Our people, they are the ones that make it what it is. When we talk about our employer brand and how we go out to market to talk about what it's like to work at Verizon, it's our employees who are telling the story. It's not us telling the story. Our employees are telling the story through their own lives, through their own eyes, and then making sure that they're really helping to connect with everybody who's out there going, where do I want to be? You want to be at Verizon.
Okay, I have one last question, then I promise it's the last question. If someone is out there and they're like, I'm going to apply now, what is the one thing they need to keep in mind, either in their application process, like filling out their resume or their cover letter, and then what should they keep in mind when they're interviewing with the recruiter?
Yeah, I think the first thing when you're filling out your application, if you're looking at the job description and you don't meet every single qualification, apply anyways.
Apply anyways.
Apply anyways.
I
Don't
love that.
stop at the bullet points.
Yes.
There's so much more beyond that. You have to go beyond that and get your application in, get it in front of someone's eyes. And then when you're going through the interview, you got to be yourself. I mean, you have to. You can't try to be somebody else. You can't try to personify somebody else and say these are the skills that I think I should have. What skills do you have? What do you bring to the table? Why are you unique? It's all about you at the end of the day, and it's not just Verizon making a decision about you. It's you making a decision about Verizon at the same time. So it needs to be a balance, and you need to be your true self to make sure that during that interview you're unlocking that and feeling comfortable when you make the decision.
Steve, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That was really
Thanks
great.
for having me.
Yeah, thank you. That was Steve West. He is the VP of Talent Acquisition at Verizon. And thank you to our viewers who are watching and to everyone who asked questions. We couldn't get to everyone, but we appreciate you putting it in. You can continue the conversation here on the stream, or you can check out some of the other really cool stories we have in the newsfeed to the right of your screen. And make sure you tune in on Wednesday. LinkedIn Editor-in-Chief Daniel Roth will be speaking with Coltrane Curtis on This Is Working Live. I'm Nina Melendez. Thanks for watching LinkedIn News Live.